So we have AZ4H Ag at Home webinar swine. I didn't change all the slide. I used my front slide there. It's horses. Some of them in their stalls act like swine, but tonight it's horses. And so just a reminder, this is the AZ Ag at Home webinar series, and this is the third of ours. And our whole idea is to learn, do, and teach and try and provide some great information at a level of education, but then also a level of application. So you're not just saying, hey, cool, I can learn this stuff, but also how can you actually put it to use in your own situation? And then we finish off with a little bit of something related to the projects of that topic. So ignore that swine. So just a reminder, we have the webinar etiquette and just in case, if you don't know, this is a seminar version of Zoom. So you are muted and you do not have pictures, but you have options, as Ashley has shared, our question wrangler and rock star behind the scenes tonight. Ashley Wright, livestock extension agent down in Southern Arizona. And she can answer question and answers either live or she can type answers depending on the type. There's also a chat that you can use, and she may or may not, depending on the topic or the question, interrupt speakers to ask, or it may be wait till the end. So if you don't see yours answered immediately, don't fear, it's not forgotten. It just may be answered later. Okay, so clearly type any questions into the question and answer box. And as I said, please be patient, polite and respectful in chat. The recording will be available later. And hopefully we don't have to deal with this, but if there's any inappropriate or harassing behavior, that participant will be removed without warning. So we haven't had to do that, and we don't want to do that, but we have to say that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is keeping your horse safe and the things that you can do. And of course, this is Arizona 4-H program, but it's applicable to anyone from beginning even to more advanced levels, sometimes as a reminder. And one of the things, the Informed Arizona Equestrian is just something that we developed to try and make it so that we can provide the best information to you and that you can use it. So today we'll start with some disease, but then we're going to get to how you can actually take an active role in preventing that. So a disease, dis-ease, easy, ease, dis-ease, any condition of a horse that impairs normal physiological functions. So the two most common causes of diseases that we see in horses are bacteria and virus. In the chat, can anyone give me some examples of a disease and whether it's caused by bacteria? And you can use abbreviations if you know that, or a disease caused by virus. Anyone brave enough? If not, you'll be able to do it after this. Okay, we got pneumonia. Which one is that caused by, June? And that's kind of a trick question, isn't it? Rabies? Okay, very good, Ashley. Flu can be virus. Yep. So strangles. Is strangles back? Okay. Thrush, bacteria. Tick-borne, okay. And tick-borne, depending on the disease, yes, COVID-19, yes, that is a virus that we are all very familiar with, which is one reason we're on this webinar right now, as opposed to doing face-to-face. Okay, botulism, anthrax, okay, we've got all kinds of diseases that you're showing. All right, and pneumonia is one where you can actually have it caused by both, either and or bacteria or virus. Now there are other things. What is ringworm caused? Oh, there you go. Ringworm is down there, but what's ringworm caused by? Is it a bacteria? Is it a virus? Is it something else? Look, we got our commercial Informed Arizona Equestrian mug with tea. It is a fungus. It is a fungus for sure. So, and it is something also called zoonotic. Okay. Oh, well, also we have warts, papillovirus for warts on young horses. What does zoonotic mean? First one that gets the answer will go. Zoonotic. I'll give you a hint. Ringworm is zoonotic. So it can go from horse to, yes, can transmit between animals and humans. We'll get to that soon. So tonight we're going to mention some kind of common diseases that people might be familiar with, and we will talk about them briefly, bacteria, virus, and then we'll go into, so this is not a disease talk, it's as far as that goes, but then we'll go into how we can do things to try and decrease and prevent our animals getting sick, or for that matter, us as well. So, common ways to spread disease. We have direct contact, we have indirect contact, we have fomites, and sometimes we also have vectors. So, which one is the one in the picture with me? We got Traveler and Cuervo, Roper and Cuervo. Is it direct, indirect, fomite, or vector? Yeah, absolutely. That's direct contact, touching noses, everything, you know, just petting horses, you name it, from one to the other. So direct contact is touching, you know, touching noses, doing that. Indirect contact would be something like if, and we'll see some examples of this, if the horse actually was drinking out of the water bucket and he was sick. Okay. All right. We're not talking about barrel races there tonight, Josephine. We're talking about diseases and contact. So let's go ahead and stay on topic here, but good answers for you guys that put direct contact. So now if one horse puts some snot from a you know, flu or rhinopneumonitis or something on something, and then another horse goes and drinks or eats from that, that would be indirect. And now if I were to take a brush that had been on, say, one horse on the left, and he had ringworm, and I brush him, and then I go to another horse and I brush him, the brush is the thing that actually carried, it's an inanimate object, and it carries the disease from one horse to another. So that would be a fomite. So, and a fomite could be clothes, it could be a towel. If you have someone that's going down and grooming 3 or 4 horses that they have to groom for the racetrack or for a show or whatever, and they keep that towel in their back pocket, they pull it out, they wipe their noses right before they go in the show ring. If one of those horses is sick and they wipe one horse and then go to the next nose, they can actually transmit that disease to the next horse just by using that towel. And then a vector would be something like a biting insect that carries a disease, or even doesn't even have to be something that bites. It could be a fly that lands in something and then carries it. Okay, so these are some of the ways that we can spread bacterial and viral diseases. So that's something important to know. So how many, you guys have, some of you mentioned strangles. This is that dreaded disease that you talk about for horses that are traveling, and or young horses that are sick, or a new horse that gets brought into a facility and then gets sick and passes it on to everyone. Strangles is a bacterial disease. It's caused by Streptococcus equi. We won't have a test on this, so don't worry. And it's something that really affects the upper respiratory tract or lymph nodes of the head region. So if you're sick, a lot of times you're either you, your mother, your father, or whoever might feel to see if your lymph nodes under here are swollen. Okay, so that's one place. And so the most common thing is that those lymph nodes will get very swollen. They will have, they will have some difficulty breathing because they're very swollen. I'll show you some kind of gross pictures in a couple of slides. But so that's why they actually called it strangles, because those lymph nodes get so swollen, it can actually sometimes make them have trouble breathing. Now, it's also an infection that can cause some slight fever. They can be lethargic. They can not feel well, not want to eat. And then they can actually start getting nasal secretions as well, which might start out as just kind of inflammation and then secretions, but turn to pus as everything develops. So now that pus that we're talking about, when they have very swollen lymph nodes, can actually rupture, or sometimes they are ruptured by a veterinarian, and it causes abscesses. Those abscesses drain wherever, and then, whether it's on the fence, the stall, the ground, the hay, wherever, and flies can actually come in and stand on the fence or go after that festering area on their neck. They can drip into water buckets. And so suddenly it's direct or even indirect or even vector caused. So several different ways. A lot of times this is younger horses are more likely to get, 1 to 5 are more likely to get strangles. And especially if they've been traveling a long time and maybe they're a little bit tired. Yes, their mouth and throat, not necessarily their mouth, but up under their jaw gets puffy where their lymph nodes are. And this can have anywhere from a 3 to 14 day, so a 2-week incubation. So if you bring a horse into your barn, it might not show that disease yet because it's building up. So just like, when you have a tickle in your throat, like a cold or something coming on, but it's a couple days later when it hits, you can actually pass that on, and that horse can actually pass that on to other horses in your barn at that time. So that's bacteria and strangles. So like I said, lethargic, don't want to do stuff, don't feel good, low-grade fever, nasal discharge starts to be clear and then eventually white with the pus. They might have a slight cough, they might have trouble swelling, and then it gets more and more swollen. So the next pictures are kind of gross. They are actually horses that have had or are in strangles. So this is a different horse, but look, this is a horse that either it looks, since it was shaved, there's a good chance the vet decided to lance that abscess. But what's that guy right there? There's a fly. So what kind of transfer would that be? That fly goes and lands on something else. That's the vector, remember? So this is also swollen right here, and you see this wet, this is open, this popped on its own, or nodes behind the horse's, area up in here, and that was just pus. And you can find some disgusting videos online where they pop, a vet will lance an abscess and it just squirts pus out. But look, this is that same horse, and she's got swollen lymph nodes under her jaw that has not popped yet. But what's she doing? She's leaning on the fence. So all of this, and you can see the fence right there, that can cause direct contact, indirect contact, vector related contact, carrying on. Okay, Here's another, this was just actually from the web, but it is a very good example of how swollen. You can see why they say strangles, because you can see that would really impact the horse's trachea, where,
Betsy,
yes.
before we move on from strangles, we do have a strangle specific question.
Okay.
And you did answer the one about vectors. Somebody asked for clarification, but then you talked about the fly. So that was clear that that's what a vector is. It's like an insect. But can strangles leave a lump at the top of the neck, even if the horse is not sick? And I think they might be talking a little bit about like those previous pictures that you just showed. Yeah.
Like this guy?
I think so.
Perhaps. So if they're not sick, can it still be swollen? Is that what we're asking? And you can clarify in chat or question and answer. I mean, this was a horse that had pretty serious case where, and the horse healed up. Okay, I see there's a question. I don't know if it'll come.
So in the chat, the first question that was asked clarified. They mean the underside of the neck, like a closed lump that you can feel.
Oh, well, yeah, especially you can see this, that sometimes when you have irritations and, even if you get a cut and it heals, there's still lumps or infection. There could be potential. And common place for a horse to get strangles. Well, if you're talking place on the horse, the majority of it is around the facial area and the lymph nodes. There is a type of strangles where it can actually affect the horse in other parts of their body. And it's actually called bastard strangles because it's moved away from the main area. The problem is you don't know if there's an abscess because you can't see that. But most commonly, it's around the head. And as far as where they can get it, if you're talking about location, it depends on, it could be from traveling, it could be passed from one sick horse to another, and because they're worn down, it could happen about anywhere. Okay, so, just this one, some horses can actually have an entire body reaction. This horse actually had strangles, but it actually manifested as like a complete rash, and then they were itchy, so the horse rubbed them. They were not pussy like the neck, but it was a whole body reaction. Does not happen on the legs and hooves, so for that question. Okay, and underside of the neck, closed lump, yeah, potentially it could. Okay, so now let's look at a viral one that we see sometimes. Equine viral rhinopneumonitis. You have to say it slowly. Okay. And people tend to call it what is caused by the equine herpes virus. There are several different ones, but the ones that we're most familiar with horses are equine herpes virus 1 or EHV1 and EHV4. So equine herpes virus can actually happen respiratory. It can actually cause abortion in a pregnant mare. We'll go into these a little bit. Or it can have a neurological form, which is very serious as well. And you can see respiratory can be caused by 1 or 4. Abortion is usually caused by 1. Neurologic, EHV1. And then that's known as EHM or equine herpes virus myeloencephalopathy. Myeloencephalopathy. Okay, whoops. So if it's respiratory, they might have a very high fever. It might be mild and then go up to 106, which of course is very high, 2 to 5 days. They might have clear discharge from their nose, which changes to yellow as the virus. You guys, if you've had a virus, you've had some parallel universes. They may have a cough. They might be lethargic, feel bad, the whole 9 yards. Now the serious stuff for a pregnant mare, she might start to have the respiratory signs, but if a pregnant mare has not been vaccinated, then she may actually, and gets rhinopneumonitis, she may actually end up with an abortion at late term, so 7 months. And so that's pretty serious. very serious. Neurological signs. So if they have the equine, the neurological form, they may have the respiratory signs a week or so, but then the virus goes to the brain, goes after the brain and spinal cord, may actually be uncoordinated, weak in the hind end, enough that they actually have incontinence, so they drip urine and manure. We'll see if this video link will play. Sometimes Zoom lets it, sometimes it doesn't. Come on. Here, let's just, come on. Okay, I think we might have it. Let's see. Okay. So this horse is neurological. It has ataxia. Oh, there are other viruses or other equine herpes virus. Oh, there you go. Ashley's taken that. But so this horse, you can just see it can't stay balanced. And it's just spinning because it's having trouble balancing. And walking, that's ataxic or ataxia. Okay, so that would be an example of a horse with neurological signs because it's affecting the neurological system. Not good, not good. Okay, so there you go. And transmission can be nasal discharge, can be fomites, can be transmitted by humans. So indirect, direct. Now a human can actually kind of be parallel to a fomite. And then if a mare aborted a fetus out in the field and other horses went to see, they could get that. And they can actually also be kind of subclinical carriers as well. So transmission. Now, just another virus that we see sometimes that is zoonotic. So it can be transmitted to humans, spread by mosquitoes. So that's a vector. And they actually acquire the virus from birds who don't get West Nile, but they can carry it. Signs, ataxia, like you just saw, lack of coordination, depression, weakness of limbs, inability to stand, possible death, and even potential partial paralysis. So some simple things you can change because this stuff moves along fast. So just using your knowledge of the disease and the ways that things can be transferred regardless of the disease. Look at this guy. So this is not like a little Pepe Le Pew French hat. This is a sick horse, and you can see he has nasal discharge and he's going to drink from the trough. Now this guy's looking at Facebook. I know you guys are he's probably looking at TikTok now because, you know, Facebook is for the old people like Ashley and I. But he's got the water hose in there. So there's the water hose because, you know, you always put the water hose in just so that it doesn't spray you. As soon as there's a level of water, you stick it in there and that way you don't get sprayed. But if he has the water hose here, there's snot going here. And then the next time you go and he puts it in the next water bucket, if he put it in the water bucket of a healthy horse, look at this. Suddenly he's the one that may have transferred with the hose being contaminated from this sick horse. So don't double dip. That's what we say. Don't double dip. So don't put the hose into the bucket, just hold it outside of it and or clean and work with sick horses last. So if you establish a day-to-day routine, establish some standards for sanitation, check your feed bins and storage bins regularly. If you know that you have mosquito-borne like West Nile virus, then eliminate standing water. It's not so much of an issue down here in southern Arizona, but up in the north, you might have puddles and about everywhere else in the country, but washing or refreshing water buckets or cleaning troughs more often than once every 6 months, okay? If you're sharing horses or sharing equipment, unless those horses are together, live together, then you use common sense, okay, they haven't been traveling. But if you get a new horse or you have horses turn over quite a bit, if you look at, Clover here. Clover is not someone I would want to share brushes with. Jubal will look like Clover before too long, and that would be fomites right there, okay? So establish a cleaning routine. You might disinfect brushes and even stalls once a month, or if there's a change in the horse's status, then you might definitely disinfect and change. Okay, this is like kindergarten. We always talk about horse, kindergarten. If someone goes to kindergarten, they bring back every disease known to from there to their parents, brothers, sisters, and everything else. And so that green fuzz is disease that they've passed around. So if you bring in a new horse, quarantine them, keep them separate. And we'll talk about a little bit of strategy. House the horses by their need and their physiological state. So if you know you have young horses, don't put them in with an immunocompromised or a horse that doesn't have great immune system, an older horse. Establish a vaccine routine. This is something you would work with your vet on, and it might depend on how much your horse travels, if you're going to shows, if you're around strange horses, the activity level. And the American Association of Equine Practitioners has guidelines available online, and there's a link to that right there. So, but American Association of Equine Practitioners, and maybe Ashley can put that, or at least write that out, aaep.org, okay, in the chat for you too. So, things that you can do. Now, not everybody has a barn to quarantine. So things, common sense, don't use, if you have a sick horse, this guy's clearly sick, don't use that equipment. Don't go from the sick horse to the healthy horses. Start with the healthy horses, use different equipment, and then have an empty stall between them or an empty pen between them, because you certainly don't want him passing anything on. You might have one person dedicated to taking care of that sick horse and then changing, cleaning clothes and all that. But you know that you just heard that strangles can be 3 days to 14 days. So check them, quarantine them to make sure that they're not sick, but they're not showing the signs yet. History, know the animal's history. And if you can, of course, buy from a reputable seller. You don't always know. You may get a good healthy horse and it gets on a trailer with a sick horse, and then all of a sudden you're in the same story there. And then if you have a horse, have them, if they show any signs of anything, first thing you might see is temperature, a higher temperature, then have a vet check them at the first sign. Okay, if you're traveling, if your horse is not feeling well, if they're lethargic, they're off their feed, leave them home. Don't, save for another show so that they're not going to be infecting others or traveling when they're already sick, which can make them, amplify what they have and make them susceptible to other things. And if possible, don't house your horses with other animals or in unsanitary conditions. Now, that's not always possible. So you'll hear some tips in the second part of this on how to prevent that. Don't share germs. And, you think, oh, there's always a common trough. And so then you think, okay, you're not going to see this big old grease slick of snot when you just go bring your horse. Now, if you're out in the desert and you're riding and there's a place to water your horse, it's a common water area. Do you let your horse be dehydrated and pass out, die, or become incapacitated on the trail, or do you risk that you might have this situation here? So common sense always has to prevail. Okay, and bring your own equipment and don't share equipment. You can bring your own water buckets and such, and even your own water if you can. But of course, again, if you're out on a 6-hour trail ride, you may end up saying my horse needs water and I have to take that risk. All right, this is your way of transportation, but clean and disinfect your trailer. Don't forget the wheels, because if you drive around a a horse show and there's been a sick horse, you might actually pick stuff up off of your tires and bring it home with you. So Ashley, if you can see the equinediseasecc.org, this is a website that I'm going to show you how you can find out some things about your own situation and what's going around wherever you are, whether it's home or traveling somewhere. So it's the Equine Disease Communication Center is what it's called. And if you put equine disease communication, it comes right up in Google. Okay, but here's what you will see. So this is, I've clicked on just Arizona, and I've clicked on, this is July 2nd, 2020. We had an outbreak of vestibular stomatitis, and that was in Maricopa. And we had some in Apache in Maricopa on June 12th. It's most recent is at the top. You can click on this. This is just a screenshot. And you can actually find, you can click on states, you can choose by disease, you can choose by dates. So this is 2020. Vestibular stomatitis was a real thing here in Arizona. Some of you, I think, were actually on the one webinar. Okay, EHV, yeah. So then the next one, Maricopa County, this is October, this is 2018, 2 years ago. Equine herpes virus, there you go. Josephine, just as you said, we also had some West Nile virus in Navajo and Coconino counties. So Flagstaff and Holbrook area, West Nile virus in Maricopa. Now, if we go back to 16, and these are screenshots, and you see I put the dates. We had West Nile down south in Ashley's County. We had rabies in Nogales area. And that horse, you know, the rabies actually look like another, like many other diseases when you don't know. And it went up to Phoenix and exposed several people just because they didn't know. When they finally euthanized, people had to get vaccinated to make sure that they didn't, since they were exposed to a horse that was positive for rabies. Equine herpes virus at Turf Paradise, Phoenix. So just, you can actually go find this stuff, and you got that link in there. So just some other quick tips before we go to the next. Visitors, make sure the stranger danger, where are they coming from? What are they bringing to your barn? And somehow you think about, okay, low, medium, and high risk. Well, feed delivery people, repairmen, they're medium risk because they're going to other farms, but they don't often have contact with horses. Some of your most potential high risk people are your farrier and your veterinarian, because especially the veterinarian, they're going to sick horses. Okay. So, and then some other things, wildlife. If you don't want raccoons and birds and rats and things which can act as vectors and spread things, then don't feed your dog or horse food. You know, don't have it where they can get to it, and store it in tightly closed containers. Protect your water source. Feed your pets indoors. My former person, when I first got here, was feeding the raccoons more than the cats that she was trying to feed. And so if you spot a problem, deal with it so that you can decrease the potential risk to your horse. Okay, so now your turn. Real quick in the chat, I want to hear from you. Now that you've seen a couple of things here, what are some things that you probably already do that was good biosecurity practice that you didn't even know? And then what do you guys see that you might be able to improve your own biosecurity? Okay, so what are some things that you do that now you're thinking, hey, that's good. Okay, quarantining new animals, that's great. Anyone else? Okay, quarantine, good. And you know, ideally it would be completely separate, but you can also figure out and manage. Okay, maybe even just good cleaning of water buckets, not letting horses share feed with other animals, cleaning water, there you go, good. Excellent, and I'll let you guys keep popping out. Vaccination, absolutely. Don't share brushes with the other horses, put in the grain in a trash can, and Also in a wooden holder so the rats can't get to it. Excellent. Managing stalls to prevent bacterial growth, quarantine, and vaccinate. You guys are doing a good job. Okay, so of course, what are you jumping into? West Nile virus, rabies, vesicular stomatitis. So now hopefully you'll jump in with a better sense of how can I prevent. Okay, so I'm going to stop share, and the next person that we have is Maddie Officer. I gotta get to the end of my slides here. And Maddie has been, you can go ahead and share your slides. She's been was in the 4-H horse program for 9 years. She's involved in 4-H volunteering, multiple opportunities that she'll tell you about in a minute. But she's going to talk to us about some quick tips too. And so she's actually done all kinds of things. And right now she's actually neuroscience major at University of Arizona and a member of the University of Arizona equestrian team, both hunt seat and Western teams. So Maddie, take it away.
Hi guys. So yeah, again, I'm Maddie, and I'm just going to kind of go over some applications of biosecurity that you can apply at activities that are away from home instead of at your barns or farms. So first to start, we're just going to kind of go over the basics, which most of you probably already apply, which is to not use the community water at shows or boarding facilities, as like we showed, those can carry diseases. Next is to clean. So much cleaning. Make sure you clean everything your horse may come in contact with, because that could be in indirect contact with another horse that had a disease. Third, no sharing, especially with unfamiliar horses. If you're at a show and you bring these horses together all the time, it's probably not that much of a risk, but it gets higher and higher risk the more unfamiliar the horse is. Fourth is don't bring sick horses to a show. I know it might suck to have to miss out on a show if you think they might be sick, but it really is just best for your horse and everyone else's horse to not risk that. Next one is using fly sheets, masks, and sprays, especially at horse shows. As we showed, those flies can just directly carry diseases to your horse from other horses. So the best thing you can do is just try to keep the flies off your own horse, since you can't really prevent them from being on others. And lastly is being up to date on all your vaccines and your testing, making sure you're testing for things like, I know some places require Coggins tests when you go to shows and stuff like that, and making sure you're up to date on your vaccines like rabies and everything is probably one of the best things you can do to prevent diseases. Next is I'm going to go over some things you might not think of when you're at a show. So I know my horse and probably quite a few others really enjoy licking the railings at horse shows. You know, you're standing around waiting for your class, and it's just something they like to do, lick the railing, lick wood, chew on stuff. But that can be very, very germ filled, especially at a big showground where you have a lot of horses coming and going who are also doing that. So maybe next time think about that if you're kind of letting your horse chill there. I know it can be hard because they're pretty active, but do your best. Next is if it's a staying at the grounds where you have your horse in a stall, it might be smart to put your tack stall or feed stall or storage stall between your horses and other people's horses. So this way you limit the amount of contact that your horse may come in contact with another horse by having that little bit of extra room. Next is bringing cleaning supplies and disinfecting your horse's stall at the show. Now this doesn't just include your horse's stall, but it can also include any community products you may use, like a hose. I mean, think about how many people use that hose and dip that hose into their water buckets or spray their horse off with it or things like that. Unless you're the only one using it, but it would be smart to disinfect it not only once, but every time you use it. And also disinfecting your tack room, as think if you have bridles hanging up in there and the bit is resting against the wall that may have germs on it, and then you put that bit into your horse's mouth, it could be carrying disease to them. So you want to make sure to disinfect everything really good the first day you're there, and you should be set. Next, here's a couple more things you might not think of. Leaving your stall window shut to deter visitors. Another thing on top of that is you can put up a no touching sign if there is a known outbreak in your area. So if you understand that there's an outbreak and you still want to risk going to the show, you can kind of put an extra barrier of safety by having a no touching sign. This picture over here is of my horse, where I always have his door shut. And usually I have a sign up there that has no touching if it's a bigger facility where there's a lot of people wandering around petting horses, or I have vet numbers, emergency numbers on it, and things like that. Next one is not letting people pet your horse's nose and not petting other horses' nose. I know it's so cute when like this little girl comes up to your horse and just wants to pet them so bad, and you want to let them, but maybe keep them off your horse's face because you don't know how many other horses they've been running around touching. And since their nose and their eyes are mucous membranes, that's where the disease would enter their body most likely. So by having them pet your horse's neck or shoulder or even leg somewhere, not near their face, you can minimize the risk that those germs will come in contact with an area that will infect your horse. And lastly, monitoring your area for any known outbreaks. We've talked about some resources such as the Equine Disease Communication Center is a really good one. You can also check your Arizona Department of Ag website. They'll have a lot of information up there. Or if you're going to different states, you can check that state's Department of Ag website as well. Two other resources that work as well is the Showgrounds website. They might know of outbreaks that have been specifically at their grounds they've had issues with. I know one place I go to does that, as well as Facebook. A lot of horse groups on there will post, or even vets a lot of time will post about outbreaks or diseases they've been coming in contact with more frequently before something like the EDCC might clarify it as an outbreak. And then bottom line, kind of just recapping everything we talked about, it's really doing what you can. Some of this isn't as feasible as other things. Again, like Betsy was saying, you might not be able to quarantine your horse fully, but being able to kind of keep them away from others is better. You might not be able to avoid that community bucket at a trail ride if your horse is really thirsty, but trying to when you can is really important. And then kind of another recap is remembering that prevention is really key. It really is a lot harder and more expensive, I'd say, to treat a disease than it is to prevent one. Okay, and that is the end of my section for the biosecurity.
And now she's going to tell us about 4-H in Arizona with horses.
Yeah, really quick. Are there any questions that have not been answered about this? Oh yeah, I like the idea of the salt block preventing them from the railing. Awesome. Okay, I will continue on with a little bit about 4-H in general, horse project specifically, and a little bit about myself. 1 second. Having an issue sharing really quick. Okay, here we go.
If you need to, oh, there you go.
There we go. Okay, I got it. So again, Betsy talked a little bit about me, but I am a 4-H alumni. I started when I was 9 years old, so as early as I could in the horse project. And I went all the way until I went to college, which is where I'm at now. And I am a neuroscience major at U of A, who is also a member of the equestrian team there. So I travel all over and compete and stuff like that. These are some photos. The one in the very middle is at the state 4-H show, where I won a buckle. I believe this class was horsemanship. The one on the right is me doing ranch sorting, which was something that was so fun. And I never thought my Arabian would love that, but he really, really liked cows. The one on the left upper picture is me at a county show riding bareback, again on my Arabian. And then the bottom left is me at a groom squad competition at the state show. So this kind of just shows multiple of the opportunities you have with a horse or even without, because groom squad, you don't need a horse. But I did pretty much everything. I did public speaking, I did the state shows, I did the county skillathon, which is knowledge-based competition. So there's really a wide array of things that I'll get into more, but I did a lot of them. So here are some of the opportunities you have, and I'm going to hand this off to Betsy for just a few minutes because she's a little bit more familiar with these first couple, and then I'll hop back in to talk about the rest.
Okay, I actually got it unmuted on time. So we have state and national competitions, and you have to do or participate in the state to compete at the national course, this is all virtual right now because of COVID, our virus that everybody knows about. But we have hippology, horse bowl, individual, team, and demos, horse judging, and public speaking. And I'll speak about the first three. Hippology is kind of like the decathlete of a decathlon of horse contests because it's all knowledge based, but you do judge a couple of classes, you take a written test, you do identifying tack and bridles and you name it, hay samples and types. And you also have team and individual problems. So it's a lot of things. Some of you actually did our virtual hippology. Horse bowl is kind of like a quiz bowl, like a Jeopardy kind of thing where you have buttons, you have teams, and you have to answer questions as teams and or individuals. And it's just you buzz in at the right time and first one answers and all that. Team and individual demos can be anything from showing the audience how to wrap a leg or showing the different types of braiding for hair, mane, and it could be anything related to the horses. And obviously individuals, one person, team would be two, and they use props that they create or bring. So Maddie, you good on that? You want me to talk about horse judging too?
I think maybe you cover horse judging and then I got the public speaking. Thank you.
Okay. So horse judging, of course, that's judging usually classes of 4 horses, and there's often at least 2 confirmation classes, and then often like an English and then a Western class, depending on the situation, to show what they have. In Kentucky, they sometimes had saddlebred and Tennessee walking horse classes, which was a little bit of a shock to the people that had never seen them go. But it's judging and also giving reasons, and those are team and individual scores. And it's just great opportunity to learn. And of course, if you're in around Vermont, Arizona, then you have lots of probably more FFA because it's done in the school. They have annual contests that we host for them for their community days. And so we have lots of people from all over the state come in to judge horses, but 4-H also does as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Before we switch back, we do have a question that might be a Betsy question.
Okay.
Here in New Hampshire, we have a hard time attracting older kids. Most of our kids and mostly all the 4-H clubs are clover buds, which I believe are the kids younger than 9. As an older kid, it's a little bit awkward. Are there any tips for attracting older kids to 4-H or keeping them in 4-H? And actually, maybe Madison does have some insight.
I was going to say she started and finished when she aged out. But yeah, it is a challenge, and especially part of that is because there's so many different opportunities, whether it's horses or otherwise. And so that, whether it's soccer or rodeo or junior rodeo or ranch riding out here or eventing back there, not that we don't have a little bit of that, but we have more of the Western events out here. So, or dressage, Madison actually can talk to you about, she did a 4-H and open showing. So maybe take it from there and you talk about why you stayed in 4-H even.
Yeah, so my main motivation behind 4-H was really just the club, and the riding, but I competed at Arabian Open shows all the way up to the national level. So 4-H was really just that thing that I did to have fun and really grow me as a person and not necessarily me as a rider. One recommendation I would have is maybe talk to your club about recruitment. I know in my Pinal County, we talked about going to high schools in our county and just exposing them to the idea of 4-H, because it really is something that is just not as well known as it used to be. So just opening up that opportunity for people in like high school age, that might not even know it's a thing, could be something that would work. But yeah, really for me, it was about the other things, which I'll talk about in a second too, the other benefits other than having a horse project.
And sometimes making it fun. If your club isn't fun, you're not going to stick with it.
Yes, definitely. Definitely making it fun, doing a lot of group things together. feeling the value of helping your community, feeling appreciated, all of that helps. Okay, next one is public speaking. So there's two speeches you can do in public speaking: an impromptu speech, which is where they give you the topic and you have a set amount of time to speak on it. And you have prepared speeches, which is where you come in with a prepared speech on a topic of your choosing. Um, they're both different. They're both options. You can do both if you want. But I think it ranges depending on junior and senior, the amount of time that you have to spend speaking. I believe junior is like 2 minutes minimum, four maximum, and senior is I think 6 minutes minimum, eight maximum. So it does get kind of intense, but if public speaking is something you're really passionate about, or even if it's something you're not good at and you want to pursue in order to be better at it, I know doing public speaking helped me not just in like a, oh, cool, I got to do this kind of way, but really helped me in interviews or doing things like this where I feel comfortable presenting to others. Just by exposing yourself to that, it can be really helpful. Next, opportunities aren't offered at a national level. So the Groom Squad is at the state horse show only. I loved Groom Squad. It was so much fun. It's something that you can work really hard at and like perfect it and go in and try to win, or you can just do it for fun. And three of your friends have not really practiced and you're kind of just winging it. But it really does help work with teammates, teamwork kind of effort, as well as it's just really fun to see all the different horses, see everyone else put a lot of effort in. Everyone's parents love it. It's great. So that's something that's offered at the state horse show. Next is a county competition only, but the winners are shown at the state horse show. And that's the poster and photo contest. So the posters are educational posters, and the photos can be photos of anything horse related. I like to take photos at my Arabian horse shows I went to, and I would oftentimes submit those. But yeah, you submit it. So it's something kind of lower level if you don't want to, go drive somewhere, or maybe you live really far from where the shows are, or things like that. You can always send in your photo competition materials and do that from home. Nice thing about all of these opportunities, none of them require you to own a horse. So you can be a part of the horse project and you can be a super active member of 4-H without even owning a horse. And that's part of, again, why I loved it so much, is it really gave you all of these opportunities outside of just having a horse. Next, I'll talk about the opportunities with a horse right here. So these ones do require a horse, and I went a little bit more in depth since there's only two of them. The first one are the competitions at a county and state level. It does not go up to national. The county competitions qualify you for the state competitions. I believe there's usually 4 county competitions, and you have to do 3 of them in order to be allowed to go to state. And then there are many discipline options: Western, English, Gymkhana, roping, and ranch sorting. I've done all of them except I would say the roping riding level, and I did beginner roping, so I was on the ground, but I never got to the point of being on a horse. I loved every single one of them for different reasons. It's a whole new set of people. Some of them are more competitive than others. It really just depends what you like, but everyone's really there to have fun and enjoy their time. So the competitions can be great. If you are a more competitive person, though, state is a good option because it can get a little bit more competitive, which I like. I know some people don't, so you could always just stay at your county level. Or you could go to state and volunteer and see how you feel about it. But yeah, that's one option. The next are record books. So this tracks your project involvement for the year. It does more than just track your horse. It tracks things like community service, your leadership roles. You also write what's called a 4-H story and things like that. But I believe you have to have a horse for it because part of it is it really, really encourages accountability and knowledge about your spending on your project. It's a little bit weird with horses because like with swine, you would spend on it and then you would auction your swine off at the end of the year. Obviously, we don't auction our horses off, so it really just turns out to be a really big loss. But it is nice to see how much you're spending on vet bills, farrier bills, your tack costs, and everything else, and really makes you appreciate how much you or your parents are spending on your horse. And also, one thing that I've noticed the record book really helped me with is it's almost like filling out a mini application or a resume. So for me, it prepared me for job applications, college applications, and my resume writing. It really helped me with a lot of those things. Lastly, I'm going to cover some benefits that I found I got out of this and other people I've talked to got out of 4-H, specifically the horse project. It again encourages your accountability and your responsibility. You are taking care of a 1,000-pound animal, and you're learning to work with it and compete with it. Or even if you're not doing the horse part, you're responsible for learning. You're responsible in your team for the groom squad competition and everything like that. It also teaches you future life skills. I got a lot of teamwork out of it. I learned a lot of leadership skills. I was president of my club for years and years. And also, it encourages professional communication. This is one I've noticed really translates for me. I've had no issues speaking with my professors in college, which I know can be really intimidating. Job interviews have come a lot easier to me. Asking for sponsorships for my U of A equestrian team has been a lot easier, all because of what 4-H has been able to teach me with professional communication. Another one is just gaining horse knowledge and skills in general, that maybe aren't super applicable in the future if you don't continue having horses, but it still is something that's really awesome and is a benefit. Another one is camaraderie. You really are guiding and supporting your club members, even those who don't have horses or are very inexperienced. You are someone they look up to, and you are really taught that you're there to guide them and support them. Next is learning the value of community service. I love doing community service in my club. We did a lot of different things, some horse related, some not at all horse related. But it really taught me that there is a lot of value, and I get a lot of personal reward from helping my community, which is why I continue to do things like this and support 4-H and everything. And lastly, something that I think is really good for kids in the age group that 4-H is geared towards is it really teaches you to represent the values of a larger purpose. So when you're younger, a lot of the times you're really just representing yourself and your individual values, but 4-H can teach you how to represent the values of another group or another organization. But yeah, one thing that I think personally I got out of it is my IHSA involvement, which is my equestrian team. I came from 4-H, and so moving into a team setting again was a lot easier for me because I know horses seems like a very individualistic sport, which is something I was kind of concerned about. But because of my 4-H involvement and because it was always more of a team thing for me, it came a lot easier to be a part of an actual team where you're competing together at shows. And lastly, my biggest takeaway, it is way more than just the buckles and the ribbons. I know everyone sees the beautiful buckles and the lovely ribbons from the state show and the county shows and the skillathon, but it really is so much more than that. And that is why I continue to support it and really appreciate everything 4-H has done for me.
All right, what kind of questions do we have? I've answered a couple of them in the chat. And what else? Do we have any questions? I've got a little puppy that thinks that this needs to be thrown. Okay, so it is 7:01. Hopefully you got a feel for, how did you do in groom squad, Maddie?
I believe we got, I think it was like either reserve or third. I thought we were really close. I did it for 2 years. The first year, I think I did better than the second. We were a little more prepared the first year. I think we also learned in our team dynamic who was better at the quiz versus the showmanship portion and things like that. But yeah, it was so much fun. But yeah, I think I got second or third.
Okay.
We have a question about what groom squad is really quick. Okay, so I know I forgot to explain it in detail. So basically you go to the state show and it's a team of 3 people and you're given a random horse, safe horse, but a random horse. And they're usually really dirty, like they've been gymkhanaing all day, or maybe they rolled around. And there's 3 portions. So the first portion is you have a set amount of time to groom them, and you're graded on how well you groom them, your teamwork efforts, your safety as well. You are also graded on, you have this little quiz that's about horses specifically, so it tests your horse knowledge. And then last portion is the showmanship portion. So you have to take this horse, and some of them have no idea what you're asking them to do because they're not showmanship horses. They are like half the time ranch horses that just finished gymkhana. And you have to take them and show them in a showmanship pattern in front of a judge to present your finished product. And based on all those 3 portions, including the safety aspect and everything, because they have, I think, 2 judges walking around watching you the entire time, you are given a placing based on the finished product and the process.
Yeah, so written test by one member, showmanship by one member, groom squad cleaning from start to finish by all the team in a safe manner. And we put this in because we wanted to have an opportunity for people that didn't have horses, that were not competing, to be able to have some activity at the horse show and teamwork as well.
Mhm.
It's actually worked out. I think this was last year was our third year or fourth year doing it. And here is the Jack Russell that is making noise chewing in the background. Okay, do we have any other questions? Because we're about out of time, but I hope that you've enjoyed this, got a little bit more thinking about how you can do some things at home and or at the show or at group activities, whether it's 4-H, rodeo, you name it, whatever, the dressage competition, but keeping your horses safe.
One more thing, Betsy, I think Tessa had a question. Yeah, Tessa Walker, about how to find 4-H members for Groom Squad if there's none in your group. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't have to be 4-H members, right? To do
No,
Groom
they
Squad?
do have to be
They
4-H
do?
members, but they could be from any county. So
Mhm.
sometimes we had a team from Yavapai County. Sometimes we had a team of people that knew each other that joined from several counties. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So good stuff. Hopefully this has been useful. And thank you so much. We will, Ashley, when is our chicken talk?
January 14th.
Okay, January 14th. So after the new year. And we hope to see many of you there. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. You can find our information either at the on the website, and if you have a question for Maddie, I can pass that on to her as well. And Ashley has just put in the Ag at Home website again. Thank you very much. And that pretty much concludes it. So we will see you guys maybe January 14th. And Wheezy says goodbye.